The passbook left a faint smear of dried mud on the counter when I set it down. It was the kind of bank passbook I'd only ever seen in old movies. Thin cardboard cover, faded ink, numbers printed in a style that looked older than I was. The edges were warped from moisture, and the whole thing smelled like damp soil and metal, like it had been sitting underground for a long time. The teller took it with 2 fingers, polite smile already loaded, ready to say something like, "We don't use these anymore." She opened it, her eyes moved across the page. Stop, moved again, faster this time. Then flicked up to my face like she needed to match me to something she'd only ever seen on a screen. "Sir," she said quietly, "can I see your ID?" "Sure," I replied, sliding my license across the counter. My pulse was steady, but my stomach felt tight. I'd walked in expecting either a dead account or a small savings balance. Nothing that would change the temperature of a room. She typed for a few seconds, the click of her keyboard suddenly loud. Then she froze. The smile vanished from her face so quickly it was unsettling. Without explaining, she stood up, passbook and ID in her hand, and disappeared through a door behind the counter. People in line behind me shifted. Someone sighed impatiently. I waited, staring at the faint mud streak on the counter like it was evidence. A minute later, a man in a dark suit appeared, bank manager by the posture alone. He didn't look annoyed, he looked careful. He came straight to me, glanced down at the passbook, then at my ID, then locked eyes with me like he was confirming something important. "Mr. Hale?" he asked. "Yes," I said, confused. "That's me." He lowered his voice. "Sir, could you come with me for a moment? We need to discuss this privately." My throat went dry. "Is there a problem?" He hesitated, choosing his words. "I need to ask you something first," he said. "Where did you get this passbook?" I swallowed. "It belonged to my grandfather." His expression tightened. "And is anyone pressuring you to bring it in? Any family member?" That question hit harder than it should have. Because yes, someone had tried. Not to bring it in. To make sure I never did. This passbook should have stayed buried, because the moment it resurfaced, my family's lies started collapsing. The manager gestured toward a hallway. "Please," he said gently. "This way." As I followed him past glass-walled offices and quiet desks, one thought looped in my head: why would a bank react like this to something my mother had called junk? To understand why a passbook ended up in the dirt, you need to know what my mom did after Grandpa died. My name is Erin Hale, and this is the story of how my grandfather's last gift exposed everything my family tried to keep quiet. I was 29 at the time, working as a warehouse supervisor for a distribution company. Steady hours, decent pay. The kind of job that keeps the lights on, but doesn't impress people who care about status. I lived in a small apartment across town, drove a used car, and tried to stay out of family drama because in my family, drama was never just drama. It was control with a smile. My mother, Denise, was the center of it. She wasn't loud. She didn't scream. She didn't have to. She controlled through organization, through helping, through decisions made on your behalf before you even realized there was a choice. My grandfather was the only person who consistently pushed back against that. Grandpa Walter was quiet too, but in a different way. He didn't argue with my mom. He simply refused to be moved by her. Growing up, he was the one who picked me up when my mom got busy. The one who taught me how to change a tire, how to balance a checkbook, how to spot a bad deal. He'd sit with me on his porch, sipping coffee, and talk about life like it was something you should understand, not something that happens to you. A few months before he passed, he said something that stuck to my ribs like a warning. "Erin," he told me, eyes steady, voice calm, "don't let anyone manage what belongs to you. Not because they're evil, because they'll convince themselves they're doing it for your own good." I didn't fully understand then. After his funeral, I understood exactly what he meant, because my mother didn't just grieve, she organized. And she started deciding what I was allowed to keep. The day after the funeral, my mother showed up at Grandpa's house with a clipboard and contractor bags. Not a joke, actual black trash bags, heavy duty, like she was cleaning out a hoarder's house instead of the home I'd spent half my childhood in. "We need to move quickly," she said, stepping over the welcome mat like she owned the place. "The estate needs to be handled. The neighbors don't need a mess. And frankly, Walter kept too much junk." I stood in the doorway, still numb, still hearing dirt hit the coffin in my head. "Mom," I said, "can we slow down? Just a little. Let me go through his desk at least." She didn't even look at me. She was already opening drawers, stacking papers into keep and trash piles like she was sorting receipts. I tried to follow her, but every time I picked something up, an old photo, a handwritten note, a pocket knife Grandpa used to carry, she'd say the same thing. "You can take a few sentimental things," she said briskly, "but don't get attached to every object." Then I remembered something. Grandpa's desk. The bottom right drawer had always been locked. When I was younger, he'd smile and say, "That one's for later." A joke, but also a boundary. I walked straight to it. The drawer was open. Empty. My chest tightened. "Where's the tin?" I asked. Mom didn't pause. "What tin?" "The small metal box," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "Grandpa kept it in that drawer." She shrugged, tying off a trash bag. "Probably nothing. Old papers. Junk." I threw out a lot. "You don't need every little thing he owned, Aaron. You threw it out." I repeated. She finally looked at me then, eyes sharp. "Yes, because I'm trying to help. And because you have a tendency to romanticize Walter. He wasn't hiding treasure in desk drawers." But my hands were shaking now, because Grandpa had hidden something. He'd hinted at it. A buried gift. A passbook. Door. He said would matter when the wrong people tried to manage my life. I looked around the room, at the half-filled bags, at the empty drawer, and felt something shift from grief into anger. Not loud anger, the dangerous kind, quiet, focused, unwilling to be dismissed. At first, I believed her, until I found the shovel marks. 2 days later, I came back alone. Legally, I had the right. Grandpa's will named my mother as executor, but I wasn't trespassing. I still had a key and I'd texted her first. "I'm coming by to pick up a few things. I'll lock up." She replied with one word, "Sex fine." It wasn't permission. It was tolerance. The house felt smaller without Grandpa in it. The air smelled like dust and lemon cleaner. My mother's scent of control. I went straight to the backyard. Grandpa's yard had always been neat in a quiet way. One big oak tree near the fence, a small shed, a patch of garden he kept even when his knees got bad. I walked slowly, scanning like I was looking for a clue in a crime scene, and then I saw it. Near the oak tree, the soil looked wrong, not dug up completely, just disturbed like someone had tamped it down too quickly. The grass was slightly torn, and there were faint scrape marks, where a shovel had been dragged. My pulse quickened. I found Grandpa's old gardening tools in the shed, and took a small shovel out, hands trembling. I dug carefully, not wanting to destroy whatever might be there. 6 inches down, the shovel hit metal. A dull clunk. I dropped to my knees and brushed the dirt away with my fingers until I uncovered a rusted tin. The kind Grandpa used to keep screws and nails in. I pried it open. Inside, wrapped in plastic to keep it dry, was the passbook, and a folded note in Grandpa's handwriting. My throat tightened as I read it. "Aaron, Sakaz, if you're reading this, it means someone tried to decide for you. Sas, take this to the bank yourself. No one else. Sas, don't argue. Don't explain. Just do it, Dux." I sat there in the dirt, the plastic crinkling in my hands, feeling like I'd just reached across time and grabbed Grandpa's wrist. The passbook felt like a time capsule, until I saw the bank name and realized why Mom panicked. I didn't even make it to my car before my mother called, like she had some kind of radar for disobedience. "Aaron," she said, voice tight, "where are you?" "At Grandpa's," I replied. Silence then. "Why?" "I'm picking up a few things." Her exhale was sharp. "You already did. There's nothing left to pick up." That's when I knew she wasn't guessing. She was watching. I drove straight to her house instead of going home, not because I wanted a fight, but because I wanted one thing settled. I wasn't going to sneak around like I was doing something wrong. When she opened the door, I held up the tin and the passbook like evidence. Her face changed instantly. Not confusion, not surprise, recognition. "Aaron," she hissed, stepping forward. "Where did you get that?" "Under the oak tree," I said. Her eyes narrowed. "Give it to me!" "No," I replied. Her voice rose slightly. "That belongs to the estate. It belongs to whoever Grandpa left it, too," I said, keeping my tone controlled. "And he told me to take it to the bank myself." The mom's lips pressed into a thin line. "You're making this into something it isn't." "You already did," I said, "when you emptied his desk." Her expression hardened. I was helping. You don't understand how these things work. I understand enough to know you lied to my face, I replied. She tried guilt next, because guilt was her favorite tool. Aaron, she said, softening her voice. You're tearing the family apart over a piece of paper. I held her gaze. You tore it when you tried to throw this away. Her cheeks flushed. If you take that to the bank without me, you're going to regret it. Is that a threat? I asked. It's a warning, she snapped. I'll call my lawyer. I'll call your sister. I'll tell everyone you're stealing. I didn't flinch, because Grandpa's note was still warm in my pocket like a hand on my shoulder. I'm going to the bank, I said simply. Mom's eyes widened. Aaron, don't be stupid. I stepped back onto the porch. Goodbye, Mom. I didn't know what the passbook held. I only knew one thing: Mom didn't want me to find out. I chose a branch across town, one my mother never used. Not because I was hiding, but because I wanted the process clean. No accidental meetings in the lobby. No family friends behind the counter. The passbook sat in my hands the whole drive like it had weight beyond paper. The plastic wrap was still smudged with dirt from the yard. Grandpa's handwriting on the note felt like a quiet command. Inside, the bank was bright and sterile, glass partitions, muted carpet, a line of people holding deposit slips, like nothing in their lives was about to change. When it was my turn, I stepped up to the counter and slid the passbook across. I'm not sure what this is, I admitted. It belonged to my grandfather. The teller, young, professional, flipped it open without much interest. Her expression shifted almost immediately. Not excitement, not confusion, alarm. She scanned the page again, slower this time, eyes tracing the stamped lines as if she was reading a language she hadn't used in years. Then she looked at me. Can I see your ID? She asked, voice careful. I handed it over. She typed something into her computer, and the color drained from her face. I'm going to get my manager, she said, already standing. Before I could ask why, she disappeared through a door behind the counter. I stood there as the people behind me shifted, annoyed. My heart started to thud. Not because I thought I'd found treasure, but because every adult instinct in my body recognized the feeling of systems waking up. A minute later, a man in a suit walked out. Middle-aged, composed, eyes sharp. He didn't glance at the line. He came straight to me. Mr. Hale, he asked. Yes. He lowered his voice. Are you the beneficiary of this account? I don't know, I admitted. His eyes flicked past me, scanning the lobby. Is your mother with you? Nope. Are you safe? He asked, and the question wasn't casual. It was procedural. I'm safe, I said, confused. Why are you asking me that? He held my gaze for a beat, then nodded once. Because this isn't a standard savings account, he said quietly, and we need to verify a few things privately. He gestured toward the hallway. Please come with me. My confusion turned into dread, then into a sharp, focused curiosity as I followed him into a back office. Then he opened a drawer, pulled out a ledger, and said my grandfather's full name like he was reading a will. The manager set the passbook on his desk like it was evidence, not a banking relic. My name is Stephen Caldwell, he said, extending a hand. I'm the branch manager, and before we go further, I need to confirm your identity through a few questions. He asked my date of birth, my address, my mother's maiden name, things that felt strange to say out loud in a bank office, but his tone made it clear this wasn't curiosity. It was protocol. Then he opened the passbook to a page stamped with a series of codes and initials. This passbook, he said, tapping it gently, is linked to a dormant legacy account. It isn't a standard savings product, it's essentially a key, proof of existence, tied to a beneficiary structure. A trust? I asked, voice tight. Not exactly a trust in the common sense, he replied carefully, but it is connected to a legacy arrangement with beneficiary instructions. It requires in-person verification when reopened. My throat went dry. Reopened. He turned his monitor slightly toward me. I couldn't see every detail, but I saw my grandfather's name clearly. Busice Walter Hale Dasek, and beneath it another line that made my chest go cold. Tas beneficiaries Aaron Hale Dow She. I blinked. That's me. Stephen nodded. Yes. A wave of dizziness hit me, not from greed, but from the sudden realization that Grandpa had been planning for something I hadn't wanted to believe could happen. Stephen continued, keeping his voice calm. There is also a deposit box associated with this arrangement. Access is restricted to the named beneficiary and requires additional verification. We would need to contact the administrator listed on file. He picked up the phone and dialed a number printed on a sheet inside his drawer. Like he'd done this before, but not often. A woman answered on speaker. Caldwell branch manager. How can I help? Stephen spoke formally. This is Stephen Caldwell at Lakeshore Branch. I have an account verification request regarding Walter Hale's legacy account. The passbook has been presented by an individual claiming to be the beneficiary. There was a pause. Then the woman's tone sharpened into precision. Name? Aaron Hale. Date of birth? She asked. I gave it, voice steady now. Confirmed, she said. Hale is the beneficiary. Proceed with verification steps and issue new access controls. I exhaled, not realizing I'd been holding my breath. Stephen hung up and looked at me. Before we continue, he said, I need to disclose something. My stomach tightened again. Okay? He folded his hands. We've had prior inquiries about this account. Inquiries? I repeated. Yes, he said. Someone contacted the bank in the past month asking about accessing Walter Hale's funds and attempting to establish authority. They were not able to provide the required credentials. My blood went cold. Ooh. Stephen hesitated, then answered carefully. A woman identifying herself as Denise Hale. Your mother. The room felt suddenly too small. I thought Mom threw it away because she didn't know. The truth was worse. She knew exactly what it was. Stephen didn't say, I told you so. He didn't even look judgmental. He just slid a checklist across the desk, like he was handing me a life jacket. We're going to secure access, he said calmly. New passcodes, updated contact information, a note on file that no one, no spouse, no parent, can receive information about this account without your written authorization. I nodded, swallowing hard. Do it. He walked me through it step by step. New security questions that weren't guessable. A new mailing address that wasn't my mother's. A request for all future communication to go through email and verified phone only. Then he said, I strongly recommend you speak to an attorney before you discuss this with anyone.
I already have someone. I lied.
I didn't, but I knew I needed one immediately. In the lobby, the world looked the same. People depositing checks, waiting in line, talking softly. But my life didn't feel the same. I stepped outside, sat in my car, and called the estate attorney listed in the bank's file. A receptionist transferred me to a man named Paul Brenner. Mr. Hale, Paul said, professional and direct. I understand you've presented your grandfather's passbook. Les, I said. And my mother, she tried to access it. There was a pause. I'm not surprised, he said quietly. Your grandfather anticipated this. The note you found, if it's in his handwriting, supports his intent, and the beneficiary designation is clear, we can help you formalize protection steps and communicate boundaries properly. Do it, I said, feeling my voice turn steadier with every word. I don't want to fight. I just want this handled legally. That's the right approach, he replied. Say nothing to your mother until we're prepared. I ended the call and sat there for a moment staring at my hands. Then my phone buzzed. Mom, I didn't answer. It buzzed again, and again. By the time I got back to my car, my phone looked like an alarm system. My mother didn't leave voicemails at first. She didn't need to. She used the family instead. By that evening, my aunt called me, voice already loaded with accusation. Aaron, she said, your mother is beside herself. She says you're taking something that belongs to all of you. All of us, I repeated. Yes, she snapped. Walter would never exclude his own daughter. I kept my voice level. Grandpa left what he left. I'm following the law. The next call was my cousin, then my uncle, then a number I hadn't seen in years, someone who only remembered I existed when there was money involved. The message was always the same, just with different emotional costumes. Your mom is grieving. Oh, don't be selfish. Family comes first. You're tearing everyone apart. Then my sister, Paige, texted me. Paige's mom says you found some passbook and you're hiding it. Is that true? I replied with one sentence. Says Aaron's grandpa left something to me. Mom tried to throw it away and then tried to access it. I'm handling it legally. There was a long pause before she responded. As Paige's, I knew she was going to do something like that. Paige supported me, quietly, immediately. My older brother, Ryan, did the opposite. He called me and didn't even say hello. What are you doing? He demanded. Mom's crying. She says you're stealing from her. I'm not stealing, I said. She tried to access something she wasn't entitled to. Ryan scoffed. You always think you're smarter than everyone. That's when I understood this wasn't about Grandpa. It was about loyalty to Mom's version of reality. The next day, Mom posted a vague quote on Facebook. Something about betrayal and children who forget who raised them. People reacted with hearts and sad faces like she'd been wronged by the universe. Then she texted me directly for the first time. Ask Mom S, if you don't hand it over, I'll contest the estate. I'll make this public. You'll regret humiliating me. I stared at the message, heart pounding, not from fear, but from certainty. She wanted a meeting, not to talk. To regain control, she wanted to talk like adults. What she meant was, she wanted control back. The meeting happened in Paul Brenner's office on a Thursday morning, in a conference room that smelled faintly of coffee and printer paper. Neutral territory, no home, court advantage, no family photos on the walls to weaponize. My mother walked in like she was the one hosting, blazer pressed, hair perfect, expression calm enough to be convincing if you didn't know her. My brother Ryan came with her, arms crossed, jaw tight like he'd already decided I was guilty. My sister Paige sat beside me, quiet and steady. Paul didn't waste time. Mrs. Hale, he said, opening a folder. This meeting is to clarify ownership and intent regarding Walter Hale's legacy account and the passbook presented at the bank. Mom sighed like she was exhausted by everyone else's stupidity. Yes, she said. Aaron found something, he's confused, it belongs to the estate, and he's letting paranoia turn this into a fight. Paul slid a photocopy of Grandpa's handwritten note onto the table and read it out loud. Bess Aaron, take this to the bank yourself, no one else. Don't argue, don't explain, just do it, I6. Mom's eyes tightened, but she tried to keep her smile. Paul continued, voice calm. The beneficiary designation was verified by the bank. This asset is not under the executor's discretionary control. You are not listed as a beneficiary. Mom's composure cracked. Of course I'm not, she snapped, because Dad always favored Aaron. He treated me like I was irresponsible, like I didn't deserve anything. Paige flinched. Ryan glanced at Mom, then back at me, as if her anger proved her point. Paul didn't react emotionally. Mrs. Hale, he asked, did you attempt to access the account? Mom lifted her chin. I was trying to protect the family, she said quickly. Aaron doesn't know how to handle money, he'll waste it. And yes. Her voice sharpened. I have debt. I have obligations. I've been carrying this family for years while Dad played favorites. There it was. Not grief, resentment, and need. Then she turned to me, eyes suddenly wet, voice softening into the version she saved for guilt. Aaron, she whispered, please. I'm your mother. Don't do this to me. And behind the softness, I heard the threat in the unspoken part fires, if you don't give me control, I'll make you pay. That's when I realized the passbook wasn't just money. It was a test of who would respect Grandpa's last boundary. After that meeting, everything got quieter, not because the conflict disappeared, but because the truth had paperwork behind it now. Paul filed the necessary notices. The bank finalized my beneficiary access. The deposit box associated with Grandpa's arrangement was opened with the required verification, and inside was exactly what Grandpa always was, practical. Not jewels, not cash stuffed into envelopes, documents, instructions, a second letter in his handwriting, outlining what he wanted done and what he did not want done. He'd set aside a portion specifically for Noah's education. My son, his great-grandson, with a note that made my throat tighten. Since, for the next Hale who deserves choices. He also directed a donation to the local Veterans Community Center he volunteered at. Not a huge splashy gift. Enough to make a difference, not enough to become gossip. The money itself, once the legacy account was properly transferred, was real and life-changing, but it wasn't magic. It didn't fix everything. It just removed fear from the equation. I paid off my student loans. I cleared my car note. I moved into a modest 2-bedroom place closer to work, nothing flashy, just stable. I kept my job, I kept my routines, I kept my life normal on purpose. Because Grandpa hadn't buried that passbook so I could become someone else. He buried it so I wouldn't be trapped. My mother didn't apologize. Not really. She sent messages that sounded like apologies until you read them twice. I hope you're happy. And I guess I know where I stand. Ryan stayed on her side, And I stopped trying to convince him. Paige stayed in my life, and that mattered. I set boundaries with Mom in writing: no discussion of the account, no guilt campaigns, no family members contacting me on her behalf. If she wanted a relationship, it had to be one built on respect, not leverage. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid to enforce it. Some nights I still thought about the oak tree, the disturbed soil, the tin box wrapped in plastic, like Grandpa was planning for a storm. He wasn't just hiding money. He was protecting my future from the people who would call control love. Months later, the dirt under that tree mattered less than the lesson it taught me. Here's what I learned from that muddy passbook, something I wish every person understood before. Family becomes a weapon. Inheritance isn't just money. It's intent. It's a final message from someone who knew you, trusted you, and wanted their choices respected after they were gone. And when someone tries to override that intent, they're not protecting the family, they're protecting control. My mother kept saying she was doing it for my own good, that I didn't understand, that I'd thank her later. But the truth is, control always has a costume. Sometimes it wears love. Sometimes it wears grief. Sometimes it wears the word family like it's a legal document. She tried to bury Grandpa's truth. The bank manager dug it back up, and I didn't win anything. I just stopped letting someone else decide what I was allowed to have, what I was allowed to know. So I want to ask you, if a family member hid your inheritance or tried to take control of it, would you forgive them? Under what conditions? Drop your answer in the comments. I read them, and these conversations help people who are living through the same kind of quiet betrayal. If you want more stories about hidden truth, boundaries, and calm justice, subscribe. Some gifts are buried for a reason, not to hide them forever, but to keep the wrong hands from finding them first.